Hello, dear listeners. Today we have a very special guest on our show, taking a slight detour from the nuts and bolts of digital advertising and marketing. I'm going to be speaking with Jonathan Pathuis. He is co-owner of Cast and Hue, a marketing agency in the Tempe, Arizona area. And his agency focuses on understanding the functional, emotional, and social needs of audiences to help them get behind the why behind their product and how to leverage that. In honesty, I hope the folks at Bud Light are listening to this episode because we talk about the four forces that impact change and choice for consumers, from push of old solution to pull of new solution to anxiety of switching, as well as habits causing inertia. We talk a little bit about the jobs to be done model of marketing. It's a very insightful episode where we talk about, this theory. What is the core of this theory? Jonathan provides great examples. He provides some really good insights into the whole jobs to be done framework of understanding marketing. And it's a great way for us in digital marketing to maybe take a step back and really go at, try to understand, what is the functional, emotional, and social needs of your audience, so that you are in alignment with that and you continue to grow as a company. You continue to fill the need that your audience has and the product or service that you're providing. Jonathan focuses on the healthcare industry. However, I felt like this episode is applicable to a lot of different industries as well. So whether you're in healthcare or not is kind of irrelevant. We talk about some really interesting things on this episode. So tune in and let's talk to Jonathan Pathuis from Cast and Hue about consumer behavior. Welcome to the latest episode of Corner Your Market. I'm your host, Silas Kimide. In this podcast, I talk about all things digital marketing, from website design and development to SEO and PPC, as well as paid advertising, email marketing, social media, and anything in between. If you're a small business owner, a marketing manager in a company, or an entrepreneur, this podcast is for you. So tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. You'll gain some practical insights, new strategies, tactics, and tools that will help you grow your business. To subscribe, go to corneryourmarketpodcast.com and select the podcast app of your choice. Then you can hit subscribe within those apps. That again is corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Also, don't forget to like and share our individual episodes. You can also leave a review in the app once you've listened to one of our episodes. Welcome to the show, Jonathan. I know you've rebranded. I've known you as John, but I apologize. I got it wrong, even though you corrected me beforehand. But Jonathan Pathuis is a friend of mine from a long time ago. I guess we've known each other at least for 5 or 7 years. We work together, as I said in the intro, but thanks for joining us today, Jonathan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing. I've always known you as a digital marketing guy, but I think you've taken a little bit more of a deeper dive into digital marketing itself. You co-own a company, Cast and Hue, in Tempe, Arizona. You work with some great, exciting healthcare companies. Tell me a little bit about the work you guys do. You've mentioned some things in your intro that you sent over to me, but I'd like to hear a little bit more directly from you in terms of the type of work you do and what gets your company going.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cast and Hue, we're a human-centered design shop. So we do a lot of consumer insights, experience design, things along those lines. But we really got into it out of digital marketing, right? So we were born out of a digital marketing agency. And I always got into that because I wanted to do things like creatively. But I found over time that a lot of the brands that I was working with, I worked on a lot of CPG brands, some bigger brands. Mm-hmm. The marketing that we were putting out wasn't really aligning with what the experience actually was like, right?
You mean for the consumer or for the business itself?
Yeah, for the consumer. And so that was something that always irked me a little bit. But then I started working on, we realized this need for strategy to kind of lead into that creative space. And
Hmm.
so, especially in the healthcare space. And so we started facilitating workshops. We were doing a lot of design thinking. And so I got kind of pulled into this facilitation piece of it where we would listen to customers' needs. And then based on those needs, we would design what that experience should look like. Right. So,
Oh, okay.
and
Okay.
that's kind of the core of human-centered design is designing with the end user in mind, right? Including them in that process.
You mean like the actual use of the product or service, or are you talking about the marketing programs that you're designing?
Well, it actually goes both ways. So we'll understand. We use a theory called jobs to be done to understand why people make decisions. And
Okay.
so understanding decision making is that core piece of the marketing element of it. But then we'll take the same approach and we'll apply it to designing out products and services for our clients that can meet those needs, those experiences that actually live into some of what's being said in that marketing.
Oh, got it. So you threw out an interesting term, jobs to be done. What exactly is jobs to be done? Just what people are looking to get, their problem fixed. Is that what you're talking about? Or
Yeah, to some extent. So it's this theory of consumerism um, that has been around for quite a while, but it really understands how people make decisions, um,
okay,
and so specifically about which products and services they're going to decide to use. So it's driven by um, kind of behavioral science and understanding the needs and motivations that ladder up to why somebody would choose to go with one company over another, right? Why would they would choose one solution over another? So, um, a good way to explain it is to go, if we think in marketing a lot about the functional needs that people have when they're deciding to buy a product, right? What is
okay,
that? What are the functional needs? Jobs to be done goes a step further and it understands like, okay, what are the emotional needs and the social needs that are also driving somebody to buy a product or service? And when you tap into that, you get this idea of progress, right? People are hiring these to make progress in their lives,
mm,
and um, once you can understand that, you can develop marketing strategies and experiences that like resonate on a much deeper level than just like, hey, I need a new car, right? Or somebody might say, hey, I need a car to get me from point A to point B. That's a really functional need. But
right.
then somebody might say, well, I need a really reliable car. They need that reliability, and that would be more of an emotional need. So
Got it. Or I read an interesting thing now. This is a little bit of a sidetrack. I'm always constantly reading things, but um, the four-seater vehicle, that's standard for a family, has prevented, I want to say, 800,000 births because people don't want to go from a four-seater to a minivan because that jump is too high. So they stick with two kids. Interesting, huh?
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
interesting, right? So anyway, so I can understand that. So sorry, that was a little bit of a sidetrack. I don't know why I wanted to mention that, but um, so tell me a little bit about consumer behavior though, because you said that most of your clients are actually in healthcare. Now, I feel like healthcare is a little bit more, the decisions that people make is a little bit more driven by insurance and by, you know, certain doctoral recommendations. How do you guys use jobs to be done in that kind of setting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, well, healthcare consumerism is this new. It's gotten a lot more popular in recent years, and it actually impacts. We look at it a couple ways, right? So, one, how are patients making decisions? How are patients choosing where to go? Because you're right, insurance is a massive factor in where they're choosing to get care. But a lot of times, we're also learning like, why might a patient be putting off care? What could be
Oh,
something
I see.
else? So a lot of times we figure out what are like the anxieties that somebody has. We did a project recently where we understood why people decided to get orthopedic surgery or not. And
Okay.
then, so that's like a piece for the patient. But then in
Hmm.
addition to that, and patients do have multiple choices, of where they
True.
decide to go. But then we focus on employees, right? So one big thing in healthcare right now is why are nurses leaving? Why is it so hard for a lot of these health systems to find qualified staff? So we
Okay.
understand what are the needs, or what are the decision making drivers there, and then finally we other referring providers, right? So what are the things that are driving referrals within a health system,
Right.
for like a specialist or something along those lines, because they do have a lot of choices about where they refer their patients. So that's one example of, or I guess a couple examples of how it's
Yeah.
applied in healthcare.
That's good. I mean, kind of switching gears a little bit, you talked about, jobs to be done about being more than just functional, looking at emotional and social needs. But in your notes, you had also mentioned understanding the four forces that impact change. Well, what do you mean by that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this within jobs to be done theory. There's this idea that there are four forces that are affecting if somebody is going to make a choice or make a change in their life, right? To decide to go with one product over another. So there's these forces of like deciding to there's this push of the old solution, which is saying, this would be like saying what I'm using right now isn't good. I need to find a new solution. But then there's also this pull of a new solution of saying like, I didn't know that this existed out there, but now I need that. I want that. It's kind of like an iPhone. You see an iPhone, you didn't know you needed an iPhone, but then as soon as you
Yeah.
become aware of it, there's this pull of this new solution, and you're like, I need that, right?
Yeah. It's like my kids when they go from being 9 to 13. At 13, they need an iPhone and they can't
Yes.
survive without it.
Exactly. And then but so those are the things that are moving you toward this change. But then there's also things that are holding you back, right? There's a little bit of anxiety around that new solution of saying like, well,
Right.
I is this going to work with my my existing setup, my existing computer? How is all this going to work? But then there's also this um the the resistance of saying like, well, my old solution still had this, and so I can go back to that. So we think about it in these four different ways, and when you look at it that way, you can really map out where in, like, if you're looking at a customer journey,
Mhm.
um, you can see kind of where are the moments in that journey that are either pushing or pulling toward this new solution that could be your product, right?
Right. What's interesting is because we've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are, in the startup situation, and I feel like they don't really give these four forces enough thought, in my opinion. I mean, by nature of who they are as entrepreneurs, they're so excited about their product, right? They say, well, I ask them, who's going to use it? Well, everybody could use it. I get it. Everybody could use it. And they should use it today. It's like, really? Okay. There's only two things in life that really have no alternatives is air and water, right? You have no
Right.
choice. Other than that, you have a choice pretty much anywhere else. You can decide what to eat, where to eat, not to eat. So
Yeah.
I think these full four forces actually does play a role. And I think for business owners, they need to think of it that way as well, is what is the push of the old? What is the pull of the new, especially if they're doing something a little bit differently? And then there's an anxiety of switching. Like I get anxious just switching my pesticide company. It's like, what the heck, man? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that. So I understand that. So then in the work that you guys do you guys, like when you're working with, let's say, a healthcare company or a business of that nature, what level of insight, how do you arrive at those things? What kind of work do you actually do? Like, do you get, you know, what is it called? Focus groups, online surveys? What do you guys do to get this information?
Yeah, so we use a couple different types of research. Mainly, it's qualitative research. So we try and go deeper as opposed to going wider.
Okay.
And a lot of times, it's in-depth interviews. So
Oh, it is. Okay.
because we want to get to things like emotional needs and the stuff that's really underlying, they usually need to be longer conversations. We make them one on one, but it's great because we get to talk to, a lot of times we'll talk to your customers, right? And we can uncover a lot of really cool insights that way by going deep with your customers. But we can also talk to people who aren't your customers, maybe people who chose another product or service. And that allows us to see what does that full competitive set look like? Like, why
Oh,
are people choosing other products or service as opposed to your own, or why did they choose not to use your product or service? So these interviews are usually about 45 minutes to an hour, but they're great because they get really rich insights.
okay. How many people do you interview? Or depends on the scope of the project, or?
Yeah, so it depends on how many different ways we want to segment the data, but a lot of times it'll be at least, I would say at least six interviews on the very bare minimum, but usually it's about 10 to 12 interviews.
Okay.
So yeah.
Interesting. I've only been a part of one focus group ever, and that was way back when I worked on the Arizona Lottery and I went to the focus group. And I was surprised at how much insights you can gain from just 12 or 15 people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because you
yeah.
feel like you need to, I think a lot of people have this misunderstanding that when you do a consumer survey, that you actually have to survey 100 people or something like that. You know what I mean? But if you do it in depth, like you said, you can actually uncover a lot. We did a website usability study once, and all we did was have maybe 6 people sit in front of the website and ask them to do specific functions. And out of those 6 people, we came up with a whole host of usability issues. So
Right. Well, so there's this thing called grounded theory in research that says you're going to get, at about 6 to 8 interviews, you're going, and these are in-depth interviews and they're one-on-one interviews. So it's not like a focus group where somebody else might even be like influencing those decisions.
right.
You're going to get the majority, whether it's 80 to 90% of the insights that you would get anyway, those are going to bubble up in the first, 8 to 10 interviews.
Right. See, that's
So,
something that I think our audience need to be aware of, because I do talk to, sometimes people feel like this kind of service is a little inaccessible for them.
hmm,
Like, even if you have like let's say a decent sized dental practice, and you really want to get a hold of what is driving why is your dental practice not getting enough visitors, or why are they turning away, or why are they not using particular services and stuff like that. Just setting up a in-depth interview of 6 people might get them the insight that they need. So
yeah, absolutely. And you
yeah.
can go into it with some, a hypothesis. But a lot of times, if you, if you're the, let's say you're the practitioner, you're the business owner, and you're
Hmm.
asking people their opinions, those are probably going to be biased to some
Right.
extent. So it's really helpful to get kind of that third party opinion about things,
Hmm.
in order for those insights to come out and be, you know, something you
Yeah.
can actually work with. A lot of times you'll look at like reviews on a site and you'll say, oh, well, based on these reviews, this is telling me X. And reviews are great. Reviews help a ton, and they're a great tool to market with. But sometimes those reviews are like kind of the start of a thread that you want to like keep pulling at and kind of unravel
Right.
and
It's
say,
the
okay,
tip of the
what's really
iceberg.
behind this? Yeah, tip of the iceberg, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So then how do you make this actionable for somebody like a company? Like, what becomes after that? I know you guys probably take that information and go into your offices, and then you arrive at, let's say, 3 main things. Is that how it works, or is it not as linear as I'm describing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so after the interviews, the way that we structure it is we'll have, we'll grab tons of great insights, and some of those will be actionable and immediate. That's like, hey, tomorrow you can start doing this, you can roll this out. But a lot of times, what's really helpful is to take that a step further and turn it into, a lot of what we do is, maybe a persona.
Okay.
Um, but it's a persona not based on like demographics. We're not looking at somebody of just saying like, hey, people between 25 and 32 or whatever that is. It's saying people who have this need, this progress that they're trying to make in their life. What are the what are the causes of them trying to make that? So it's not just looking at the correlation aspect. It's
Mm.
looking at like, what's the causation behind these people. And then if you have personas based around those deeper needs, those emotional needs, you can create this marketing messaging or whatever it needs to
Okay.
be that's based around that.
Interesting. Okay. And any interesting stories? I mean, sometimes you approach a project like this, you have a certain idea, and then at the end you're like, whoa, that was completely not what we were thinking, because you want the data and the research to speak for itself, right? You said you approach it with a hypothesis, but that hypothesis could be proven wrong. Right? That's the whole point of this thing, right? So
Yeah, so it can be, it can be validation, or it can be something that is completely new that we didn't think of beforehand. But we usually try and go into it without as many assumptions. Maybe our client would have more assumptions. So a good example of this, though, is we did work with a popular Asian food restaurant that they wanted to understand, they were putting together this whole paid media campaign, and they said, okay, we understand that the landscape is changing. This is maybe like 2018, 2019, when DoorDash and Uber Eats and all of this was coming out, and they said, we need to stay competitive. So we want to understand why people come in and eat at our restaurant. And so we did the research, and one of the things that came out of it that was really odd, and this shocked them, it shocked us, was that the reason people were choosing or hiring that restaurant was because of the food safety, right? They had issues with feeling confident about, and this mainly comes into the allergies, right? So people who have allergies need to know that their food is not being cooked around, maybe it's nuts, right? Maybe they have a nut allergy. And if everything's wok fried, they have to make it new every single time. And so this was something that they could actually double down on that they didn't realize before. It's kind of an odd example of food
it's a
safety.
good example. It's relatable. It's a relatable example.
Yeah. So, and then what we did, so we had this insight, and they were like, well, are you sure about this? And so we did qualitative first. We did these interviews first. That came up. And then we did a survey, and the survey validated that and said, look, this is actually, like, across all of these different segments, this is a serious concern. So that allowed them to then update some of the marketing messaging that they were putting out. So
I see.
Yeah, that's always an interesting one, though.
Yeah, that is interesting. I was trying to think of an example of when I was part of certain things, but I think one of the things that when we were in the Arizona lottery and we did some of this research back in 2010, 2011, it was really amazing how many of the scratcher tickets, the low price scratcher tickets people bought, because we're all going for the big ones, right?
Right.
But people needed this feeling of winning, right? Because the chances of you winning a $20 prize on a $3 scratcher ticket is much higher. So people know that. So they play those more often. And it was amazing, how much scratcher tickets the Arizona lottery actually sells compared to the Powerball.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're getting the same it's getting that same emotional response, that excitement, right? That you're craving. It's not about, oh, I need to make X amount of money on this. It's like, this is something
you won something, man.
Right. Yeah.
That's why, and that informed our campaign at the time of you're a winner, because there's so many people don't think of you as being a winner when you're buying the lottery, right? But you are a winner. You're playing to win, and you're winning. And there's a lot of people winning all the time. It's just that there's only one winner in the Powerball across the world. You know what I mean? Right. So the perception is very different than what the reality is. And I think that's probably the closest that I could think of in terms of my own examples. So
it's great. I love it.
Yeah. So what are some myths then in terms of the work that you guys do? I mean, what is the main resistance? Because the work you're doing is amazing and it's very valuable for any business. But what is the myth or the barrier that keeps people? I guess you got to do this on your own company and try to figure out, what is driving your own.
Yeah, I think, some of the myths or barriers that we're facing. I mean, something that we're constantly struggling with. Well, one of the biggest barriers that we struggle with is making that differentiation of what like this type of research can do, as opposed to some research that might have been done in the past.
Okay, got it.
So a lot of times we'll come in and we'll say, you really need to understand your customers, and maybe there's like assumptions there that say, we do understand our customers are X. But similar to the example that I shared earlier, you might think you know your customers, but then there's probably a lot of insights there that you haven't gathered yet. And
Mhm.
especially with your non-customers, there's a ton of great insights that you can gather there of why did somebody choose not to go with me? And that's harder to get to, but that's one of the big things that once people really grasp that and move past this like assumption that you might have, you start to see a lot of there's really valuable insights that come out of
Yeah,
that.
because a lot of times companies they'll have salespeople that are kind of serving as the front line, like why didn't they go with us? Well, a lot of times the sales guys are going to say, well, the price, or,
Yeah.
or they didn't get it, or, you know what I mean? So I think those are very valuable. You do need to get past, I love salespeople. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes, their experience is skewed too. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I came from that sales background, and the price is just one factor, right?
Yeah.
It's value, it's trust, and those things all come into play once you dig a little bit deeper. But on the surface, it looks like price every time. Yeah,
No, I mean, price is an interesting factor. I wouldn't say it's the only factor, but even in the consumer goods, like I'm amazed at how much we pay for certain things that are just like mind blowingly, like that VR set that Apple just came out with, $3,500, and people are probably going to line up to buy that thing, right? I'm like looking at that, going, what? The bigger
yeah,
example to me, not to pick on Apple, but is the headsets. Those AirPods, $150. I was like, what the heck? Is that how much they cost?
yeah. Maybe I think at least.
At least,
So,
right?
but okay. So coming back to like social needs, those headphones, well, it's a social thing, right? It's
It
people
is.
seeing you with those pods in and going like, this person has AirPods as opposed to a string, and that's
And
you
I'm the
know.
only guy at the gym that still has the string, because not because I'm cheap. Look, I have a reputation of being cheap in my household. I get it, right? But it's not because of cheap. I know I'm going to lose them. I am going to lose them on day 2, and I'm going to kick myself, or it's going to fall in the bathroom. That's what
That's it.
that's what I worry about. So,
Yep.
so price is not the end all and be all. And I think maybe we should have said that a little bit earlier, but there are different factors that goes into when people buy things, right?
Yeah.
Um, so switching gears a little bit, Jonathan, you kind of are now a business owner, right? I mean, this is your own company. So what's it like being a business owner now, man? What talk to me about that? What keeps you up at night, or what keeps you, sleeping soundly at night?
Well, any other business owner knows that, yeah, there's a lot more of the keeping you up at night than the sleeping soundly at night. But it's exciting. I mean, the I love the passion of being able to kind of steer a ship and say like, what direction do we want to take it? Where do we want to test new things? We're
Right.
always taking our own medicine of saying like, let's talk to people, let's understand what's our product market fit. And that's been really big for us of testing new things out and seeing
Mhm.
how they resonate with people. Um,
And you have free reign on doing that, right? You can test these things because you're the top dog.
I'm the top dog. Yeah, I have a business partner, but it's great
Yeah.
because we get to bounce ideas off of each other. But it's literally, yeah, I get to make any decision that I want around it. But it's invigorating. And it's really exciting. The wins, the highs are even higher. Some of the
Mhm.
lows can be a little bit lower,
Oh yeah. Oh
but
yeah.
it's worth it. I mean, it's been such a fun ride, and I've only been a business owner for a little over a year now, but
Okay.
I guess that's still pretty good, right?
It is good, man. I mean, it is good. Sometimes we don't look back at the journey we've already had and appreciate where we are, and I think that's important to do. So I think one
Yeah,
year's great. I mean, you're going to have many, many years of success. I know it.
that's the plan.
Um, so let's kind of talk a little bit about how people can get a hold of you. What kind of connections are good for you? I mean, we have listeners on this podcast. I mean, I'm sure they'd like to connect with you. What is a great way to connect with you?
LinkedIn is probably the best way. That's where I connect with a lot of people. It's just Jonathan Pathuis, and Pathuis is spelled Pathuis. that's a
Mm.
kind of a tricky one. But you can also go to our website, which is www.castandhue.com.
Okay.
But either one of those ways, I love talking to people about this type of stuff. So anybody who's curious about their customers, trying to grow their business by staying competitive, staying differentiated through these consumer insights and through just really having a
Better insight on your clients, right? On your customers. Yeah.
better insights on your customers. So
And yeah, what is the origin of your name, by the way? Again, should have probably asked that earlier. Cast and Hue.
Yeah, so it's Dutch. Or so sorry, Cass.
Not your
You
last
asked me.
name.
Yeah, sorry, you asked me earlier about my last name. No, Cast and Hue. So, well, when we originally started the business, it was all about experience, and it still is about experience. But the cast was kind of this idea of it comes from a little bit around theater, right? So.
Mm, mm.
Shedding the light, and one of our slogan is illuminating the human perspective. So cast is
Okay.
all about this casting a light on insights, and then hue is just understanding the different spectrum of this experience. So we play into that a lot.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's some interesting besides this podcast? Which podcast do you listen to regularly?
Gosh,
Or you don't listen to this podcast regularly, right?
No,
Jonathan?
of course I listen to this podcast. I like listening to podcasts of my friends.
Okay.
So you're one of them.
Okay.
No, but this podcast's good. I really like I like listening to this is kind of like a bit of a tangent, but the Near Future Laboratory. There's this is actually a futurism podcast, which is very cool. It's people in the design space who they create these kind of artifacts from the future, and then it's discursive, right? So it generates this conversation about what the future could look like. So I've been really So I really like that. Some very interesting thinkers there, and the futurism side of things. That's like a little bit out of my reach.
What is the name of the podcast?
It's the Near Futures Laboratory. It's Julian Bleeker's podcast, and so I actually like a lot of his content. It's pretty good.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know you're a busy guy. I don't want to keep you forever here. It's been a great conversation, Jonathan. Castandhue.com, and then I'll drop the LinkedIn URL in the show notes after this at the bottom of the page on this website. And any last words? Anything that parting wisdom? I know getting to know your customer is one of the main mantras everybody's preaches, but I don't think people do a really good job, and that's why you exist, right? So getting to know your customer, find the emotional need, find the social need, find what drives them, and build your marketing around it and your services around it. So
absolutely. No, I think you nailed it. It's all about decision making. When you can understand why people make decisions, it's a lot easier to resonate with them, and understanding the why behind decision making as opposed to just kind of the what.
Okay, great. Well, hey, thanks for being on the show. It was a great conversation, and anyway, hopefully we'll do it again when this turns into video at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here. Thanks again for having me.
All right, bye.
Bye.
If you're a small business owner, a marketer in a company, or an entrepreneur, this podcast is for you. You'll become better educated and informed when it comes to digital marketing. And if you implement the strategies, tactics, and tools I discuss in this podcast, your business will grow and prosper. To subscribe, go to corneryourmarketpodcast.com. That again is corneryourmarketpodcast.com. You can also search for Corner Your Market in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast, and you can subscribe through those apps. Also, don't forget to like and share our individual episodes. You can also leave a review. Finally, I would love to hear from you, so if you have any questions, feedback, or general comments about the topics I discuss, feel free to send me an email. I will be sure to share and discuss your feedback on the air if it will benefit our listening audience. You can write to me at connect@corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Just put listener comment in the subject line. That email again is connect@corneryourmarketpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. I look forward to being back next week. Until then, be good and do good.